Welcome to Write with Love. I'm your host, Sarah Williams, best-selling author, speaker, and creative entrepreneur. Each week, I chat to passionate and inspiring authors about their journey in creative writing. Some are traditionally published, some do it themselves. Everyone's journey is different, and everyone has something interesting to say. We all love love and love what we do. Today's show is brought to you by our amazing fans and supporters on Patreon. If you'd like to help support the show and get some awesome bonus episodes, go to patreon.com/Sarah Williams Author to learn more. Now here's today's show. G'day and welcome to Write with Love. Today on the show I'm chatting to Stefanie London. Thanks for joining me today.
Thanks for having me. It's very exciting to be here.
Well, I'm really excited to talk to you. Let's start. Can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and your journey to publication?
Sure. So I have been writing since about 2012. Late 2012 was when I first kind of put fingers to keyboard with any serious intention of hoping to have a book finished and published. And I was published in 2014. My first book came out with Harlequin, Mills and Boon. And then that same year, I also happened to leave my hometown of Melbourne, Australia, and move over to Toronto in Canada. So I kind of did most of my getting published thing when I was here in Melbourne, in Australia. And I actually did manage to sell the very first thing that I ever wrote, which is kind of an odd experience in the publishing world. But for anyone listening, don't worry, I still have a drawer full of rejections from other things later on. So it's kind of a myth that once you get published once that you never have rejections ever again, because that's definitely not the case. And I actually got picked up through a competition, which I think is kind of a popular way these days for people to submit their manuscripts to a publisher. And they had asked for a 1-paragraph synopsis of the story, which was my Only the Brave Try Ballet. And at the time, I kind of was like, I saw it on Twitter. It was the last day of the competition and I had no idea what I was doing. But I was like, oh yeah, I'll throw a little blurb in this, like not thinking it would go anywhere at all. And from that, I got my very first request to submit a manuscript to the UK office with Mills and Boon, which was so exciting that when I got the request, I accidentally deleted the email because I was so anxious. And so after I had fished that out of my trash can on my computer and figured out what I needed to do, I then went through a series of revisions over the course of about 8 months until they eventually offered me a 2-book contract, which was possibly the most exciting thing that's ever happened to me.
Yeah, for sure. So did you study writing early on or anything like that, or you just naturally talented?
Yeah, I think I'm a bit of a cliche in that I was that kid that just loved books and loved to read. And my dad used to joke that I was like the worst kid to try and ground because being sent to my room was the best thing ever because that's where all the books were. So I was always that kid. But I sort of took a little detour away from writing and went and got myself a very serious business degree and tried to kind of make it in the corporate world and was doing a mix of learning and development and corporate communications, change management, that kind of stuff. That was what my career background was. And then I started writing on the side. But no, I don't really have any formal qualifications for writing. All my qualifications are more in like the business arena.
Yeah, wow. Which would be really helpful if you were an indie like me, but you're a trad, so you don't have to worry about it so much.
Wow, yeah, there's still a lot of stuff that we have to do. I mean, I someone the other day that people are like, oh, it's nice to sit and write all day. I was like, yeah, I'd love to do that, but that's not how it works. There's always way more other stuff to do, like letters and marketing and networking and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, I think the business background is definitely not detrimental for that stuff for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So we should talk about your heat level. I know you've got some Harlequin Deer books, which I know tend to be on the spicy side. So is that your preferred type?
Yeah, they are a little bit on the spicier side. And I actually feel like my heat level has been a little up and down depending on the project that I've been working on. I think Naturally, I probably sit very much in the like stock standard mid-heat contemporary, like right in the middle, and then I will sort of flex up or down depending on what the project requires. But dare is definitely like at the upper limit of what I like to write. And those books are a real challenge because for me, you know, the heat level is only as good as the emotion that you can build into it. So to try and have that really high heat level and still have that scene working as hard for the story as every other scene in the book, when you have to do that 3 to 4 times in 50,000 words is quite the challenge.
Certainly is. So you were saying that the first book that you got picked up was one in your Ballerina series, wasn't it?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So why did you write about ballerinas? Is this something you are a ballerina or have some experience in?
I had a brief dabbling with ballet when I was a child. So I think I guess not really a brief dabbling. I did it for about 15 years. That's probably not a dabbling, but when I was 5 years old in, you know, little kiddies class with our, you know, little blue leotards. And I think my first ever ballet role was as the Cowardly Lion in The Wizard of Oz when I was 5. And I studied ballet up until I danced for about 15 years, but I unfortunately had to give up ballet at around the age of 16 because I had pretty severe tendonitis in my feet. And the ballet was actually causing a lot of injuries to my feet. And so I was not allowed to go on point shoes. And so there was a part of the storyline in Only the Brave Try Ballet is about a ballerina that's had an accident and can't dance anymore. And that was absolutely drawn from some of my angsty 16-year-old self that was still bitter about being told I wasn't allowed to wear point shoes in the dance studio. So yeah, a little bit of personal stuff in that book, but I've always had a real passion for the ballet. It's something that I love to go and see with my girlfriends even now. It's just an art form that I've always been fascinated with, and I've written a few dances across the spectrum of my books.
Yeah, I always love when dance comes into a book. So I'm excited to read that. It's my next on my TBR pile. Is that one of yours? So, so you're living.
I think they make great.
Yeah, they do. So you're living in Canada, and I thought this was funny then. So you wrote The Aussie Next Door. Tell us about that book.
Yeah, so The Aussie Next Door is a small town contemporary romance set in the fictional town of Patterson's Bluff. So for any Aussies that might be listening from the Victoria region, it's I basically set it kind of in between Blairgowrie and Sorrento on the Mornington Peninsula, which is a place that I used to go as a kid. And it's a really, really beautiful part of the country, beautiful coastline views. And I haven't written a lot of small town romances before. It's definitely not something that I've explored a lot, but I love the idea of this like big Aussie family and this woman who has grown up in America that is basically come to Australia and found a home that she never knew existed and trying to sort of fit into the way of life there. And she is on there's a bit of a ticking clock in this one because her visa's about to run out and she really doesn't want to go back to the past that's waiting for her in America. So she's desperate to stay in Australia, and so a bit of a fake relationship, fake marriage ensues, and just her sort of tenacity mixed with this wonderful, like charismatic, big, noisy family. It was just such a fun book to write.
Yeah, fantastic. Sounds really good. And I love that. I love that part of Victoria. I used to live down that way too. So it's beautiful. Awesome.
It is.
So your last book that came out, and I know you've got like over 20 books, so you must be a pretty fast writer. And you're also published, so you've got your Harlequin deals, but you are also published with Macmillan.
Oh, with Entangled, yeah, they're distributed by Macmillan, but the publisher is Entangled, yeah.
Brilliant. So they must keep you pretty busy. How many books do you kind of have to produce a year to keep up with all of your contracts?
Oh, I think I average about 5-ish. So sometimes there's slightly more, slightly less, depending on, because I do write across a range of word counts, that number can kind of flex up and down a little bit. So the books the Patterson's Bluff books and all of my books with Source Books, which is the Bad Bachelor series, are all about sort of 90-ish thousand words. And then all my Harlequins are 50 to 55. And then I have some novellas as well. So yeah, it flexes up. Sometimes it's a bit more, sometimes it's a bit less, but I kind of aim for 5 and hope that I'm not going to work myself into the ground too much.
Oh my gosh, that's still doing really well, 5 a year. That's insane. I wish I could do that. Fantastic. So Faking It was the most recent book that's come out. Tell us a little bit about that one.
So Faking It is kind of an interesting book for a couple of reasons. In terms of the storyline, it's actually a spin-off of a previous series that I had, which is the Dangerous Bachelors Club that I wrote with Harlequin Blaze. And unfortunately, when the line closed, I had this character that got left hanging without a happy ever after, and I sort of ended up in a situation where I didn't really have time in my schedule to give him a story, and the reader emails started to become increasingly insistent about Owen getting his happy ever after. So when I had a chance to start a new series with Harlequin Dare, I was like, okay, I think it's time. I think we need to bring Owen back and give the readers what they want. And Faking It was also my first time writing first person. So I'd had this itch to try something different, and I've always written in third person past tense and really wanted to give a first person story a go. And so I said to my editor, what do you think? Do you want to have a read of a few chapters and tell me what you think? And she's like, no, I just think you should go for it. Tell it how you want to tell it, and kind of gave me the stamp of approval. And so off I went. And it's a series called Close Quarters, which is about a building named 21 Love Street, where the residents of the building find themselves mysteriously falling in love inside this building. And so the first one is a sort of frenemies to lovers, which is one of my favorite tropes. 2 people that were in the police academy together that have to go undercover as man and wife to break down a jewel thief operation that's happening within this building. And it's super sexy, but also very, very funny and emotional and all those other good things that I love to put in my books. I love a fake relationship. I think that is like, if I see that on a book, that will usually hook me in. But I also love frenemies to lovers, because I feel like it has inbuilt a lot of that like snappy banter, and there's kind of that, it's not as like angry and intense as a full enemies to lovers, but I think it's got that like a bit of spice to it, which I quite enjoy.
Yeah. Oh, fantastic. So what are you working on at the moment?
So actually, I'm working on another book in that Close Quarters series. The third book, which does not have a title as yet, is a runaway bride, wrong brother kind of story that opens with the heroine climbing out of her wedding venue in her underwear and flagging down a passing car to escape the wedding. So that was just like a barrel of laughs to write that scene. And again, it's first person, it's really sexy, it's very funny. And I really love writing about heroines that are kind of had a bad experience but they come into their own once they're kind of given the freedom to be who they really are. I love those kinds of stories. So it's definitely one of those. And it will be coming out, I think, kind of sometime mid next year. So that one's due at the end of the month. So I'm hustling on that deadline.
Excellent. Well, where can we find you online and keep up with all of your new releases?
Yeah, so I have a website. It is www.stefanie-london.com. Stephanie's spelled with an F because my parents wanted to make my life difficult. So that's the website. It has all my social media. I'm on Facebook and Instagram. And I have a newsletter as well, which is like if you just want a kind of monthly update of what's going on, that's a good place to go as well. And I have a free novella for people that sign up to that. But otherwise, I'm pretty much in all the usual spaces.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me today, Stefanie. That was great.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really great talking to you.
Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the show. Jump onto my website, sarahwilliamsauthor.com, and join my mailing list to receive a free preview of my books and lots of other inspiration. If you like the show and wanted to continue, you can become a sponsor for just a couple of dollars a month. Go to patreon.com/sarahwilliamsauthor. And remember to follow me on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel and leave a review of the podcast. I'll be back next week with another loved up episode. Bye!